So we got an epic episode today. We've got Tori in the house
Yes, we do.
here to share some wisdom, share her journey, share some magic. And I've been really excited about this, and as we kick this thing off, we're always wondering, what should we drop into? What should we evaluate? How should we approach this from a conceptual, state? But just in our initial conversations, we're like, all right, this is going to take a turn. Let's throw the book out on this episode. Yeah. Let's just go into the juiciness that presented itself. And I'm really excited about that. I know Ryan sure as hell is. But it's a pleasure to have you here, Tori. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating a space where anything goes. Because these are definitely topics that I think are really important and somewhat taboo, but powerful medicine for people if they're willing to go there with themselves. And that's what I'm about, is exploring the parts that seem a little scary, icky, unclear, uncertain, uncharted waters. I'm like, can I be bold enough to wade out into those waters and see what's out there? Yeah.
Speaking of bringing the medicine forward, can you just share with the listeners a little bit about you and the specific medicine that you bring forward into the world?
So I am a high performance coach and breathwork facilitator. I speak, I run a podcast. Similar to you guys, I wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. I'm multi-passionate. But my journey into this work of self-healing and transformation started as a byproduct of needing the medicine myself, like so many of us. I was really lost for a long time, living a life that I thought I was supposed to live and pursuing things that looked good and got a lot of praise and admiration and recognition, but felt hollow and empty. And as a byproduct of actually some loss in my life, there was a big reevaluation of what was really important and meaningful to me and how I spent my time and energy. And it led me down a path of self-exploration, of asking the question, who am I? What do I want? And how do I ultimately get what I want? And so what I do with people is help them kind of explore those same questions for themselves and look at where they are, where they want to be. And ultimately we get to unpack what's in the way of that. And that might be practical. It might be subconscious beliefs. It might be, unconscious limitations that they're carrying around in their psyche, unprocessed trauma, judgment, fear of many kinds. And so as I continue to do the work on myself and add tools to my toolbox, if you will, of things that help me liberate the stuck parts of myself, I then turn around and try to teach those to other people. So it's an ever evolving journey. So the work that I do now is, is a byproduct of kind of where I am personally as well. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you bring up it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
Because so often people get like roles and titles, even in spaces like this that are spiritual spaces or healing spaces where we know it's ever growing, but then we're like, oh no, this is who I am and this is exactly what I do. But I love that you're bringing up that student side of it. Like, this is what I do right now, and I'm continuing to grow and I serve deeper as you grow more. And that's so beautiful to own, like that humility in it of that growth.
Yeah.
So thank you for being honest with that and expanding on that answer too, and bringing your own experiences into it. Instead of just being like this title.
Yeah. More than anything, I have so many titles like we all do, but I'm a student, of life, and I'm here to learn. I think we're all here to learn some things and remember, more than anything, the things that I've forgotten about who I am and where I come from and my origin, my true nature. And so that journey is the one that I continue to walk, every single day. And the path continues to look different, but I'm happy. It's led me here. So it's a good
Hollowbone
place.
student.
Good place to be. Very much Hollowbone student.
So I'm curious about the student mentality, because that's something that, you know, I think is paramount in transformation. Like we need that. And it's also something that's very challenging to adopt that mentality for a lot of people, because, you know, the last thing most people want to do is realize that we don't really know what's going on. Right. And so I'm curious, just to go right into that, you know, how did you adopt a student mentality, and really how did you embody it? Because it's one thing to say you're a student, it's another thing to, you know, be coachable, like you speak about on your podcast so much.
I think it requires humility, right?
Yeah.
It requires a willingness to say, I don't know it all,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm willing to learn. And, you know, one of the things I cling to in my life is like, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm typically in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Not because I can't learn from somebody that, you know, is not as far along than me or whatever, but like there's always something I can learn. And that's kind of my process for when I walk into any room or situation. It's like, what am I willing to see this from a new perspective? Is there something I always assume that there's something I don't know, and it's in the exploration of that and the willingness to say, even if I do this well, I want to learn how to do it better, right? Even if I think I'm a good communicator, I'm humble enough to say there are ways in which I can continue to sharpen that iron, right? And like, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. I really believe that like the people in my life are mirrors to show me where I get to grow and where I've hit my kind of my edges. So the things that trigger me, the things that piss me off, the things that like anger me, show me my capacity to love. And so I use that as kind of my teacher, as much as, you know, everybody, every interaction. It's the epitome of like having a growth mindset, right? As opposed to just thinking there's one way to do things or one way to be. It's always like, I don't want to be the same person I was yesterday, you know?
I really love that. And I appreciate the realness that you hold in yourself and that like student mindset you're talking about. And I know this firsthand because we had dinner last night. We're all just connecting as human beings. A lot of us came together, a lot of people that are high performers, business owners, podcast owners, just being able to have that humanness, like silly conversations and banter, and also then dropping into really deep philosophical conversations around different things, but the humanness that you carry, even though you have massive successes and you continue to grow as a businesswoman and all of these many different things, these accolades, the humanness that you hold is beautiful. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because, you know, you're saying these words, but as a listener, you could be like, oh, okay, is that true? I've seen it, I've felt it, and I know it. And it's so cool to experience, because you know somebody in a heartbeat whenever they truly open up.
Yeah.
And so I've felt you, even just in that dinner last night that we all shared. It's pretty beautiful to witness.
Thank you. I think one of my superpowers is my curiosity for life. And so, you know, it's interesting when I think about being a kid. I was always like asking my parents, like, just the craziest questions, like, Mom, where does sun, like, or sand come from? Like, what is sand? And she's like, ask your dad, you know, I don't know. And my dad would be like, go read a book or go Google it. And what they taught me was how to be resourceful. And if there were questions that I had, like, that there was an answer, but they taught me how to go find it instead of always giving me that answer. But that curiosity for life and understanding who I am and where I fit in the world and what my part is to play in this cosmic, you know, play that's kind of playing out before all of us, that has always been the underlying thing, like thread that is part of every piece of my life, is just this hunger to understand and ask why. And why do I do what I do? Why does this make me feel this way? Why am I drawn to these people or these things? And so I just continually chase like that answer and that curiosity for life and what inspires me. And it's led me to some pretty cool places, but it continues to require me to learn new things about myself. Yeah.
Do you find that asking all those questions can sometimes be paralyzing?
Because it's always feels like there's somewhat of a destination you're never reaching on some level. But yeah, I think it feeds a hunger within me. But I've had to also come to terms with not always having an answer. You know, there were times in my life where I had big questions that were hard hitting, that like I grew up in the Bible Belt, right? And I had, so there were a lot of beliefs and ideologies that I was sort of indoctrinated into and deeply conditioned to believe. And sometimes my life experience challenged those beliefs. And so when they came to a head and I was asking these deep questions, there were times I didn't have an answer. You go through loss, you see unspeakable things, you watch loved ones pass away, you experience trauma and tragedy, and you ask questions like, where is God in this? When I pray, do you hear me? You know, and there are times when you sit with that question and there isn't an immediate answer. And so I've also had to become okay with living in the unknown. And what I've found is that when it's useful for me, I get to define the meaning behind whatever experience I'm having. If there's a question I have and I don't know the answer to it, I get to decide if like I'm okay with not having an answer, or and I get to apply meaning to every piece of that. And so I tend to try and choose meaning that gives me more peace than suffering, because sometimes there isn't an answer. You know, like you said, you alluded to, there's things that we don't understand. And can I also be okay with that?
And you're talking about choice a lot here, and I love that, because that's really what a lot of this work comes down to, right? Is one's ability to choose. You work with high performers, you work with people that, you know, generally probably come from some pain, come from some challenges, come from these aspects of life that we don't always like to look at. And a lot of times we can identify with those parts of our being and really live from those parts of our being. You know, how do you support people, or how do you personally, because you also live this, really come into the power of choice and taking radical ownership? What's that conversation like for you?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is sovereignty, right?
Yes.
The hallmark of trauma is choicelessness. And so there are things anyone listening can relate to, that, like where you grow up, what family you're born into, what area code, what school you go to. Some of those things you didn't choose, right? And I believe that in healing, finding our voice, finding the truth of who we are, and like finding our own path and creating the futures and the results that we want for ourselves requires us to reclaim our sovereignty, which is our ability to choose. And so for me personally, it's looked like recognizing that I have a choice at all. There was a specific moment in my life where that awareness came to me. And it was after my sister, who's 4 years older than me, was diagnosed with leukemia. And it was the day that we found out that she was ill, and cancer, that word, you know, enters the picture, and our family sitting around the table before she goes to the hospital. And my dad looks at us and he's like, we have two choices, hope or despair. And we're going to choose hope. And it was the first time I realized that I had a choice in the way I was going to perceive this experience and circumstance. And if we chose despair, it was like, what is the alternative? Is like, what is the alternative if I don't choose hope, to see the good, to look for the holy in the shit? The alternative is a dark place to be, right? And so I cling to hope in the midst of adversity and darkness and challenge, because when you're faced with something that is really, really hard and you're trying to navigate and get out of it, because you can be a high performer, you know, and maybe you have a miscarriage or your kid gets ill, or you have to take care of your parents, or there's something that you didn't anticipate coming down the road, and it's about how you handle it. And so that choice of like, I get to choose how I'm going to perceive this situation changed everything for me. And that's where we start, I think, with my clients and with myself, is like, what is my current outlook on the circumstances in my life? And what's the story I'm telling about them? And how does that make me feel? And is there a different perspective that I can choose, or a different path that I can choose, something I can choose to do right now that would help me or make me feel just 1% better, bring me 1% closer to connection or to love or to safety. And recognizing that you have a choice is the thing that's going to like set you on a path that actually create the results in your life that you want.
And these are heavy scenarios. In moments like this, in the miscarriage, the loss of somebody you love, or something similar.
Sure.
How do you hold hope and feel grief?
That's a good question. I think it comes down to recognizing that both things can coexist. I think we tend to think about things in a singular way, meaning like, if I'm feeling grief, then I can't also hold something else. And I was that way. I didn't know until I started to practice things like meditation and breath work that I could hold both experiences simultaneously, that I can have grace and compassion for somebody that's betrayed me and be pissed off about it, right? And angry and rageful about it. And in that allowing of both to be there, you don't reject or abandon what's true for you, because they're both true simultaneously. That I can find a reason to be hopeful. I can look for it, because I will always find evidence for the story that I choose to believe. And I can allow myself to be human and to have the full spectrum of experience and emotion. And feeling both is what like allows me to be the fullest expression of who I am. I think judging one or the other, that it has to be one way, is really limiting what's true. And I just continue to seek like what's true for me. Like, I'm pissed and I'm angry, and simultaneously I'm going to cling to hope that there's a silver lining, and I'm going to go out and every day look for it and look for evidence that that's true.
Well, I ask about the hope and grief because I've been through some things recently, some massive shifts around people that I love and care about. And hope is an easy one for me to hold personally. And it can be the opposite for many people, but personally I can hold that. But when it comes to grief, I'm like, grief isn't sexy. It's not, does it even serve? And so these stories come up around it. And I know for other people as well, feeling grief can feel like something that either a waste of time, or no, we need to stay positive during these circumstances. And I love what you're saying, because it's so true. It's not only just helpful, it's necessary. Because when we avoid the thing that we know we're all feeling and the truth beneath it all, and we're covering it up with positivity and like, no, it's going to be okay, you're fine. But, we're crying in the bathroom or holding these things and not sharing the true grief.
Yeah.
That's what needs to be felt.
That was me. That was my story. I mean, I was the girl that everybody was like, you're so strong. And like, how are you getting through this? And like, you managed to still like excel and perform. And I, there was definitely parts of my life where I was completely compartmentalizing, and I knew, oh, well, continue to achieve and continue to get like accomplishments and accolades and recognition makes me feel good, and it makes me forget about all the pain, and it will help me to feel better and not have to deal with this pain I'm unwilling to feel. And it was a distraction, and it was a way that I avoided my grief and my pain. And so I was the girl that was like, Tori, how are you? And I'm fine. And then a coach told me one day, she was like, Tori, you know, every time you say you're fine, it's like lit, right? You redefine that for people. It's feelings internally not expressed.
Yeah.
So she's like, every time I say I'm fine,
that's a hit.
Right? How many times am I using that as a mask to not actually share what's true for me? And now here's the thing. There were times I wouldn't share for multiple reasons. One, I don't trust you, right? You haven't earned the right to know. Because you don't have to be transparent for the sake of being transparent. Like their trust is built over time. Or maybe it's an avoidance strategy because or this is going to take longer than I have to sit down and actually tell you what's going on in my life. So maybe it's for that sake, you know, but it really requires you to check in with yourself and be like, why am I saying this? Is it because I'm fine? Or is it because I don't actually want to go into the thing that I'm unwilling to acknowledge? And I really believe that we can't heal what we're unwilling to feel. And so if I wanted to be free and I wanted to feel all the good feelings, honestly, like to the extent that I repress my quote unquote negative emotions, I'm also muting and diluting the beautiful bliss, the pleasure, the joy. And so it required me to invite it all in and allow it all to be there.
It reminds me of you know, the only way out is through, right? It's so true with emotion. It's got to be felt. It really, truly does. And you know, I love how you're talking about this because it requires an individual to not identify with their emotion and to really just observe the emotion. And you know, I love how Thich Nhat Hanh always talks about being in an emotion or experiencing an emotion, never being the emotion, you know? So, you know, really what I'm taking from what you're saying here is there's this really powerful ability for individuals to feel grief and also, you know, feel joy or be successful, feel momentum, whatever, as long as they don't identify with either of those pieces, because then they're just energy moving. Right. So I love that so much.
Well, I was just going to say to that point, if we understand that emotion is energy in motion, then we understand that this too shall pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I have it tatted right here because it's like, that's my reminder to feel both. Like, or you're like, how do you hold both? It's because both are temporary. It's just you're in the experience of it for the moment, and then like a wave, it just gets to move.
This makes me want to bring up something I've heard you say before, which is a saying that is known all around the world, and that is time heals all wounds.
Right.
So on this theme of like, you know, this too shall pass and and things moving and everything is temporary, but time heals all wounds seems to be something you're like, nah, I don't like that one. Is that still true to you, or is that something that you're like, it's not true?
I think it's an easy catchphrase that we tell people to make them feel better in the moment, you know, because we are at a loss for what to really say or how to really meet someone in their pain. And so it's a nice like way to kind of feel like you're empathizing with somebody and connecting with somebody, but really it's kind of surface deep. In my experience, time doesn't heal all wounds. That's just my experience.
I agree.
I take them wherever I go. Wherever you go, there you are, right? And you take all of that emotional baggage and wounding and trauma with you if you don't unpack it. And so, yeah, I think time is a necessary component. I don't think we heal overnight. We don't become it's like we don't get here overnight either. Time is required at times, but I don't think we can lean on that as our hope for healing and being saved from the pain that we so wish would like kind of just go away. It requires you to do the work. Yeah, and the work is feeling.
Yeah, I totally, I hate that term. Yeah, it's like, to me, it's like it encourages suppression.
It does, yeah.
It's like, no, it's like, wait it out. Nah, it's not gonna work. It's just gonna go deeper and deeper into that big toe and be more and more forgotten, but still very alive in the subconscious. So I love that. Let's just hate on that right now for a bit. Let's just keep talking shit about it, you know?
Get it a tattoo and then cross it out.
Yes.
Then cross that out. Tattoo, yeah, that'd be great. That'd feel really good. Yeah, good idea, Ryan. Yeah, keep it. So shifting gears really quick to your present state, because it seems like you have really transitioned out of that. You know, we speak to you, we feel you. You're an embodied woman. You obviously play in both of those worlds still, and you're realizing a high level of success. And you know, there's still, I'm sure, shit that comes up in your life. So how do you navigate that with the speed that you're going, and ultimately, you know, the organic nature of your being?
Yeah. I mean, like we've said, this is an ever evolving process. I'm not complete or done or whole and by any means, but I've definitely done some pretty extensive work on not identifying with my trauma or my pain or my past, and the ways in which I actually use that as a prop to feel justified in my kind of position and perspective towards life. There was a lot of parts of me that I had to unlearn around that, like, life had to be hard, and it had to, in order to be successful, I had to suffer. And it was going to require, yes, work, but work in a different way than I'd ever kind of identified before. So my the way in which I orient to my emotions is very different now, especially as I continue to do the work on myself, but like have outward success in the work that I do. So I have a much better approach to attuning to what's true for me in the moment and knowing what I need and how to meet my needs, and how to ask for my needs to be met, so that I don't have so much downtime where I'm not like burnt out and I'm not just completely like I'm able to increase my capacity to hold more. And that's sometimes looks like doing things that in the past I would have judged as not productive or not progressive, not something that's actually going to help me attain some goal, like play, like pleasure, like prioritizing feeling good. I used to prioritize, I used to identify so much with pain. And that has definitely been a shift for me, realizing that in order to play offense and to actually play to win and not just like play to protect myself and play not to lose and have one foot on like in the back, trying to like support me. It's like, how do I go full on for what I want towards my goals and like actually run? And that has required me to cut, this parachute that was like slowing me down, which was like this need to suffer. And the need for everything to be hard and challenging all the time. And now it's like this whole different approach to life and success and work, and prioritizing the enjoyment of the work and not the pain of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get into pleasure and play. I'm
Yeah.
so ready. I'm
Right?
like,
He's just smiling.
my seat.
He's just creeping up.
But before that, I'm super curious about how you personally check in with, 'cause you said what I need, what I want, maybe what you desire. How do you check in with that? Especially as as a woman, as somebody who has natural cycles and somebody who has, seasons of life, and every month you literally have, different experiences. How do you check in with that as somebody who maybe has a schedule that's consistent, or, creating space and really checking in of like, this is what I truly need, want, and desire?
It's actually required me to do a little bit of the opposite. So I used to be very rigid and structured, and it's like it has to look a certain way every single day. And like I have to have this perfect routine, and I get up at a certain time, and then I spend time outside, and then I do breath work and meditation and write and all of the things. And I realized that I actually put this pressure on myself that was unnecessary to check all these boxes. And so part of the checking in with myself has required me to kind of get rid of that and actually create more spaciousness and freedom to really feel like actually what's true and alive for me in the morning, specifically when I get up, and listening to my body and listening to what do I need now, whether that's, and really that requires me getting out of bed, making my bed, getting outside immediately. And feeling the sun on my face, putting my feet in the grass, and then orienting my day and my schedule around that. Sure, I've got a calendar of things that I have to do, but I really make sure that I've got this spaciousness in the morning to see what do I have the energy for, and like what does my body want to do today? Because it used to be like, I've got to be at an Orange Theory class or a CrossFit workout or in Hot Works or whatever it is, and it's very regimented. And now, so part of attuning to what I need is actually allowing myself to not do what I thought was expected every day.
It's that feminine.
Yeah.
But that is something that I'm curious, it doesn't seem like it came naturally to you. How did you transition from being like high performance, get shit done, like the masculine framework, even of like routines and things like, meditation, but it needs to be 15 minutes on the dot, and it's actually not serving at some point. How did you transition into like that sense of freedom in your mornings? Because lots of people are still in the kind of masculine framework of moving through the day and want that transition.
I think it was this attachment to thinking there's one right way to do it. Right. And what I've found is my trying to fit into someone else's box or way of doing things actually is the opposite of productive. If I actually want to be productive, I need to do what works for me.
Yeah. Instead of pigeonholing yourself.
Yeah. So part of it was taking away my judgment of the way that I thought the right way to do it was. And realize that the right way is my way, and I get to design that and create that. And it required me to say, like, what does feeling good look like? How do I know when I feel good? What makes me feel good? What are the types of things, practices that do? And then here's your permission slip, Tori. Literally write a permission slip to yourself if you need to. It's like, this is top priority. This supersedes everything else on your to-do list. Because if you're doing it from a place of have to, should, need to, like pressure, then I already am in resistance to that thing. So for me, it's about how do I remove the resistance and the tension that's in the way? And sometimes that's this feminine allowing for me to change my mind, or for it to look different today than it looked yesterday. And that permission has unlocked a lot for me, because it finally feels like I'm living for myself.
You trust yourself.
Yeah, that for myself, what I need. Whereas I was trying to be this like packaged, perfect version so that I could be labeled as good.
That's good stuff. So I want to talk about space for a second. Because I know a lot of people struggle with this, especially people with packed schedules. And they hear this term space. They've got the 2 businesses, they've got the 3 kids, they've got all of these things rolling. Are there some applicable ways that you create space that you could share, whether it's, I don't know, turning off, not touching your phone for a certain amount of time, or, time blocking this space? Like, how do you actually make space like an application in your life?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I have support. So I have a team.
Yeah.
Looking at her right now, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing is like, I know I can't be all things to all people. I can't do it all. So I've had to build a team of support and structures in place so I can delegate and so that there are things that I can have sovereignty of choice and be really responsible for what I say yes to and what I say no to.
Mm-hmm.
This week, for instance, is crazy for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, and we've got back-to-back podcasts. We've got a festival coming up, speaking engagement, clients in the middle of it, multiple dinners, socializing, all of the things, right? And as a priority, we blocked a day. We have time blocked off on our schedule for dropping into the creative space and the feminine space and just like being more of the visionary in my business and for my life and that kind of thing. So that's necessary. It's like I can't. Every day isn't me just running off to the races. And it's like, that doesn't work for me. So having a support team, having people that support me in managing my calendar and really being responsible for the things I say yes and no to. Like everything I say yes to, I'm saying no to a million other things. And so one of my highest values is presence. So if I'm going to be present, because I believe that like one of our best things as high performers is to be adaptable, like continuing to have this adaptable energy, to be in the new now, for what does the now call for right now? And it might mean a changing of schedules or something needs to happen. The deadline has changed or whatever. And for me to be able to adapt to that requires me to be present to what's needed in the moment. So if I value presence and being able to be fully here, then I also need to allow myself to like tune out all of the noise. Because if I've got a laundry list of things I'm like thinking I have to do after this, I've missed the whole moment of being here. Like there's no point. I've actually like prohibited myself on some level of receiving and giving and contributing in the way that I really want to. So I believe that like I need to be where I am in the moment for me to actually get the juice out of the squeeze. Why am I doing the thing I'm doing at all? Like the whole point is for me is for connection. Yes. And if I'm actually on to the next thing, then I've missed the point altogether. So having someone block my schedule, knowing and waking up and listening to what do I need and giving myself the permission to do it. And then being super present to where I am, it gives me the energy to then show up for the next now and the next moment and what the next thing calls for. Because if I'm on E, if I'm depleted, if I'm burnt out, I have nothing to give, you know? And so I've also had to rearrange my expectations. I mean, that's really real. Like I can't do it all. I don't need to do it all. And why, if I think I need to do it all, what belief do I have that tells me that that's who I need to be in order to be successful? Like, is that actually true? I have to be everywhere, always, all at once. Right? So it's always this constant reevaluation of why are we doing the things that we're doing? She helps me to come back to this. It's like, what's our intention here? Like, really, what's the intention for showing up to this thing? And is that in alignment with who we're wanting to be and what we're wanting to create? And if no, it's a no for us.
Remembering the why.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into it. When it comes to these, you just hair flip it. When it comes to these areas of trauma, high performance, even business owners, the ideas and topics of pleasure and play aren't usually talked about.
Right.
And it's usually a separate thing, and it's not seen that it fits in those classes or it's important by any means, usually. For you and for what you do, and from what I'm hearing recently coming into in the past year and a bit, how has pleasure and play come into your life and started exciting you and made you realize that it fits into these pieces of work?
Yeah. When I moved out to Vegas, there's so much that you can find here. There's a lot of play and pleasure happening. It's like the dark and the light on every the full spectrum is available to you here. Mm-hmm. So when I got here, I was kind of hit in the face with all the options.
Chicken nails,
yeah. It's like
it's great.
Choose your own adventure. What do you want? What do you want to explore? It's available. And immediately when I got here, I got connected with a couple people who remind me of you a bit because it's like their essence is very playful and childlike, and their spontaneity and adventure. They could take the most mundane thing and turn it into fun. And I realized by being around them how much internally I felt like a wet blanket. And I even remember saying but I was so drawn to it because there was something for me to learn from them for sure. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why am I so attracted to this? Everything, even going to the store, feels like an adventure, and like, I don't know who I'm going to meet, and I can't wait to see what like unfolds, and how can I turn this into a game and turn this into something that I would have experienced as stressful or boring or mundane, and turn it into something light and exciting. And so just being in proximity with people like that showed me contrast to where that wasn't alive in me at all. And so I started to give myself permission to do things I'd never done before.
Like what?
This is something I'm still very much exploring, and I consider myself kind of elementary and a baby in, but it really feels like my primary work right now of really deepening into the feminine and releasing more places of judgment and limitation on myself. But it looked like I had never been to a music festival before. I'd never like experimented with a lot like psychedelics. I'd never, in terms of like, just like my sex life. It's like, how can I actually bring more presence into all of these aspects of my life? And what it showed me, sadly, was like I was very disconnected, and I was very shut down, and I was afraid. I was afraid to experience pleasure and to have fun and to feel good because I was afraid it would be taken from me. And so I got to, in the exploration of opening up into these spaces and finding safety in pleasure and feeling good, I realized I also needed to grieve the parts of me that never felt safe enough to do that. But it also created this whole new world. Like life was like, this is a playground for you to explore and have fun. And every day it's like, I have to check in with myself around, where am I judging myself? And first of all, where am I judging everybody else around me? Whereas like, that's the place, that's too far. You've taken it too far. That's too much, right? And when I say that, it's like, what about that scares me?
Love that so much. And Ryan and I talk about this a lot because there's this, it's almost like living two lives in a sense, the way that society's put it together, where it's like you have this side of you that's the wild man, then you have, or a wild woman, and you have this side of you that's, you know, the public image. And for whatever reason, society hasn't gotten to a place yet where we accept both in the same expression.
Right.
And, you know, Ryan and I talk about this a lot because we hold really deep space, really deep space. And we pride ourselves on our ability to do so. But we're also goofy as fuck.
As
like,
you know.
Yeah.
Right? So, but they're not separate. They're not separate. And I honestly believe that the ability to hold so deep is because there's the outlet for the goofiness. There's the outlet for the play. There's the outlet for really being vulnerable and talking about our edges. You know, Ryan's invited me into ridiculous edges.
Like what?
Yeah, please tell me.
So on one of our episodes, Ryan for my birthday, was it a birthday or was it just it was one of my birthdays last year.
Important.
He gave me a pea spot wand. And he's like, he gave it to me on the episode.
Okay.
And so he puts this really floofy Flurfy package on the table. And he's like, I got you something. And I open it and it's this glass wand. And I'm like, what's this for? Is this sculpture?
Yes.
Yes.
He's like, it's a sculpture for your butt.
Yeah.
And so he invited me into this wild edge. And it's just, it's such a gift in a sense, because a part of me, there's like that still unintegrated toxic masculinity was like, no, like I can't do this. And it took me a very long time. And we've done an episode on an update that we haven't launched yet, but it took me a very long time to lean into that. And so finding these edges and moving through them while still never compromising reverence and depth is something that we're really passionate about. And so to hear you explain this and to hear you exploring these different realms is beautiful, because we got to normalize these topics, right? The fact that we can't, like the fact that sex is still so taboo.
Yeah.
And when you talk about it at an event or you're at a dinner, even in some of the deepest spaces I've been in, I've talked about certain things and people are like, it fritzes them.
Yeah.
And you're like, yo, we're on this exploratory path. Like, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for sex.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, why don't we talk about how to make it better and more
Let's explore,
enjoyable?
but just not this topic.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Yeah, anything but that was
That's
weird,
off limits.
you know? And
Yeah.
and I love how you said, you know, you pay attention to the fear, because it's that fear that broadens us, you know, and you know, it's our firm belief that true embodiment is full spectrum.
Right.
It's not that you're just better at channeling spirit. Can you also go play laser tag? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's that's embodiment in the expression of humanness. So I love what you're sharing about finding those edges, because we're really on a part of our mission is to normalize that and is to invite people in and to let them know it is safe.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing, right? That we've never had spaces created for us or environments that are safe and allowing for this type of expression and exploration. It's always been used in ways of shame and judgment and fear and you know, that was my experience of it. And so as I hear you guys talk about it and I see your banter and but I also feel your presence and the depth. It's what you said earlier, Ryan. It's the substance and the play. I want both. I don't just want one or the other. And I realized I lived on one side of that pendulum for a really long time. And there was also like a heaviness to it and like a density to it, and just felt like everything was so serious all the time. And I envied people like you. I was like, how can they? One of the judgments I had was like, oh, he must have not been through anything hard in his life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
If he'd been through something hard, he would know that life is hard. And it's not just this like fun time. And so I actually had to give up my belief about that like in order to be a whole, wise, integrated like woman, that I had to be this like martyr, you know? And I hear you guys talk about it and I'm like, those are still very real parts that I'm like actively trying to pursue and explore, and yet even in this space, there aren't a ton of spaces where this is this is normal and practice. And it's like, let's create an environment and container where we can intentionally like move into those edges. And that's like, sign me up, because how can I sit here and talk to people and ask people to do something I'm unwilling to do myself?
Yeah. That's the duality part of it, right? That's where you're talking about the play and the reference.
Yeah.
It's the same things we were saying before with feeling of like the things that come up that can be heavier situations. Wherever we were saying hope and grief. It's like, it's the same, like we have to feel it all. And you know, in that scenario, like, oh, hope and grief, I can feel simultaneously. But then this is like, oh, here's a new exploration. Here we go. So to talk about sex, right? I have this belief that with sex specifically and with pleasure, the more we can feel and the greater it is, the more abundance that comes into our life. I feel there is no difference between good sex and money coming in. Seriously, like if you want to look at it like that, I'm like, I see that
sex
as like
magic, baby.
Sex
Let's
magic.
go.
like in manifestation through sex, we did a whole thing. What do we call it?
Masturbation manifestation.
Masturbation manifestation.
Nice.
So even like, so sex is, seems like it's with a partner, but it could be self-pleasure practices. It could be these things. I'm curious for you to talk about sex.
Yeah.
Where it's, something that we can go into, and you're somebody who's a high performer and somebody who trains people in high performance and works with people at a high level. Do you notice when you start to open up sexually in your life, or maybe in your self-pleasure practices, that then it's replicated in some other area of life, bringing in more of something else? Is that something you experience?
Absolutely. Yes. So I actually just had Emily Fletcher on my show. I don't know if you know Emily, but we just had a whole conversation about this topic, about sex magic, because she started something called Ziva meditation. She was talking about mindfulness meditation and manifestation, but she was like, when I encountered sex magic, it was like the same thing. I was like, why isn't everyone doing this? That was like her whole point. And so this is a whole new phenomenon for me, but what I'm learning is it's really about the capacity to hold, like as I allow myself to be so deeply present with the pleasure and the feeling, this like high vibrational feeling, and bringing with that my intention or my desire and holding that in the forefront of my mind, like it just like blows the doors of possibility open in my life, where it's like this, whether it's this actual physical release of energy, or and that's seen in like my pleasure practices, or just in my business, there's like the doors of abundance just get wide open, because I'm able to, my depth of a capacity to hold it is greater.
So as a woman, you have this different experience than Cam and I, obviously.
Sure.
You have to open up and receive. I mean, Cam has his wand, sure.
And surrender.
You have, I do too. We had the same one.
You got a matching one.
But exactly.
Yeah.
But you have this ability to really, when it comes to your sex magic, like you are opening up to the universe or to the person or to yourself and your self-pleasure. Do you notice that kind of openness? The doors opening is what your analogy was.
Well, it's true.
Your doors opening, right? It's like you actually opening up to the world and to surrender.
Like the surrender piece is so big, because it's like I get to practice the letting go and the release of falling into what's available to me right now, and trusting that I'm going to be held in that, that I don't have to do. I don't have to force. I don't have to like effort.
You get to soften.
I get to soften and receive. And in that receiving, I just receive more. And so, but that's not available, and wasn't available to me for a long time because of fear and stigma and shame and frankly, just lack of understanding and knowledge and experience. And you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I wish someone would have sat down with me one day when I was younger and be like, Tori, God gave you this fucking body. Use it, enjoy it, explore it. Like, no, I learned about sex just like everybody else, like through porn and conversations in school, and like, and we get hyper like fixated on stuff that's not real, and then we don't know how to be with ourselves. And so all of this is about learning how to be with what is for me. And every moment allows me to like soften into what's true right now, and notice, where am I tight, where am I tense, where am I constricted, where am I holding on to some like pattern or fear, or like my inability to let go. And as I do that physically, that is like mirrored in the energetic and like emotional and all the worlds. Like, I might be fucking crying, because I have this crazy release, and it's just like, now I'm lighter. I'm lighter and freer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're connected to creative energy in the most
what wants
powerful,
to be birthed.
Right? Exactly. And I come up with this a lot with, cause it's funny how many high performers or, you know, successful individuals don't like talking about sex.
Mm.
Like the moment you start talking about, hey, you know, your sexual life is connected to actually how far you can push this thing.
No.
They're like, no, my sex life's good. And it's like, really, is it? And you start asking questions and they freeze up. But there's power there. And there's, you know, and I won't go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy or anything, but like the fact that sexuality was shut off by religion so much generally shows something. Usually things that were burnt or shut out or, you know, demonized were the most powerful things.
Yep.
And I really love this because that needs to be normalized. I even know for myself, I considered myself a very sexual being for a very long time. Then I started exploring the realm of Tantra and I went, I don't know shit. I was like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And when I started practicing, what? Like, it was just, I was speechless because of how much it brought to my life and how much power came through me, how much softness, but confidence and all of these things. And also how much left, right? There's so much of our trauma gets stored up in our sexuality, especially if there's sexual trauma. But even if there's not, where does it go? Our root chakra. It holds it all, right? The perineum, the sexual organs, everything. And it's so important to dive into these, but I know it can be very confronting. It can be so scary for people.
Yeah. Well, I always pay attention to what sparks my curiosity, right? Always. Tantra is not something I've explored, but it's always been something I'm curious about. And so it's interesting that that's resurfacing because there's something that's like, come here. So I'm curious, what has exploring Tantra taught you? How has your relationship to sex in your own body like changed? What's like been your biggest takeaway?
Good question. That it can feel that good, you know? And I think for me that's been my biggest realization is, you know, we always talk about, you know, and in manifestation, you have to bring really heightened levels of emotion into your body. And I thought that I knew, you know, what felt good for a very long time. And I was so brutally wrong, Connecting with the breath, connecting with energy bodies, connecting with touch, connecting with play, connecting with intentionality, creating space around pleasure for myself as a man and with my partner changes the game. And it opened up this realm of how good it can feel. Because, you know, as a man, most of our programming is, you know, fuck her hard, come, that's it. Yeah. You know, that's what porn teaches you. It's like, go, 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 go. And that's like the most basic functionality of our sexual energy. Like that's like the scientific, like impregnate to survive.
Right.
But then when you go deeper into the pleasure of it, you start to realize that it's this doorway that like you can start to hold more heightened emotions, more feeling, more juiciness. And I saw how it started transitioning into my friendships. It started transitioning into my surfing, my mountaineering, my fitness, like moving energy in the gym and being like, oh, you know, like it started filling every cell of my body. And so it made life juicier across the whole spectrum and taught me really, truly how good things can feel. And I'm still, you know, I'm only like a year or two into this world, and it's just like, it's a whole new world in there. And it's like, it's the gift that just doesn't stop giving. It really, truly is.
Just like the wand. Yeah. It's the same.
Honest. And you know, we joke about the wand a lot. True, that was one of the most healing experiences of my life. Yeah. Was going into that space, because not only did I carry so much baggage about homosexuality and, you know, so much baggage around, you know, what a tough guy is supposed to do. Like, it broke down so many barriers that I thought I had moved through, right? I was like, I've done so much work. I've been on this path. I'm doing all these things. And then I went into that and I was like, that's still there. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So it just opened up a whole world.
It's so easy to talk about these things.
Right?
Yeah.
It's another thing to experience them.
Yes.
All together. And I'm guilty of it.
We all are.
I'm so guilty of it. And why I think this is important, though, is like I hear you, and like even just being in proximity to it, not even having the experience, life becomes a little bit more vibrant.
Right.
When you even realize that that's possible.
Right.
And then you have context, or you get a reference point from someone else, and you like, again, you take the lid off of the container, and you're like, oh, actually, no, you can just have more life.
Yeah.
More pleasure. And you don't have to like put a cap on it. And that, I think, is just, that's still something I'm like learning to accept, that it be that good. That one of the affirmations I have right now is just like life just keeps getting better and better and better and better and better.
It's so beautiful, because it's often that we think we have to do more to then feel more, or for things to feel better, but you don't have to do more to feel more pleasure. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, which I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm curious. You said, I did all these things and I was moving through life and yada, yada, yada to be good. There's an archetype of the good girl.
Yeah.
Do you identify with that or the past, or maybe still moving through that?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to, well, yes. I'm good at being a good girl.
Yeah.
And was for a really long time. I was a straight A student. I was the MVP. I was the epitome of that archetype for sure. And I think even as like I got older, and I was trying to find my own way in my like spiritual life. I kind of left the church and was redefining who God was to me, what my spiritual life looked like, all of that, unlearning all of the shame around my sexuality. So it started, I remember, with my pleasure practice as being the first like fuck you to all of the people that told me that wasn't okay. And over time, it's just been like picking up more and more and more of those things. It's like this rebellious part of me that wants to come out. That's actually the true, like more of the truest expression of who I am, instead of who I learned I needed to be.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's most alive for me right now, is the reorienting to the truth of like, this good girl has been like a safe place to be, because it kept me like loved and praised and all of those things, but it was not real. It wasn't real.
What's the opposite of a good girl for you? What are you stepping into?
The wild woman.
The wild woman. Yeah. It's such a common story you hear, especially for women that come from either religious backgrounds or any backgrounds where maybe there was some strict holdings, and it's so common, especially in the States and these areas, that they feel like they have to do more to receive more. And it's the exact opposite. Many times, most times, we're talking about surrender, like softening is one of the most powerful things you can do as a woman. And it's such a gift to see or receive as a man, or even just for yourself, not even for a man, but for yourself, to soften. And to know that that is enough. And that's actually greater than anything you could do, is to just receive, to be. Like, that's such a superpower and a gift. But when coming from the archetype of the good girl, oh, fuck, that's the last thing you think you deserve or can do. How do you, because you're saying it's alive for you right now, how are you moving through that in different ways now?
Play has become a much higher priority on my list, for sure. It really has. And I have these conversations, this is something Nikki and I have started to talk about, and finding women who are also in similar positions. I think that even as talking about the good girl persona, transitioning to the wild woman, there's like the true maturation of a woman. It's like, what does it really mean to mature into who you are?
Yeah.
And the disillusion, like the part of me that thought that I needed to be a certain way, I have so much like love for her. And there's also still a lot of sadness there because, yeah. She's missed out on a lot, you know? Yeah. And I want her to feel free to be all that she is. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is so timely and so necessary because it feels like something I've been sort of exploring on my own, and it's felt sort of lonely. And I haven't found like I had a community where this was normalized and like part of the work. It's always been something out there that I didn't know how to get to, you know? And there's never been a path to reconnecting with myself in that way that was like felt like, okay, this is the next, how do you do this? Like you talk about it, it's like, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like practically in your life? And so I think if I'm just being honest, like this is just this conversation is a reigniting of that part of me that wants to come forward and wants to be more awakened and alive and allowed to be all that she is. Yeah.
And you got us now.
I know. Yeah.
You got us.
So
now.
thank
We're
you.
Here.
Yeah. It's so healing. It's so healing to have that kind of reflected back that it's actually, I don't have to hold that space. I don't have to be the doer, which I'm so and have been so accustomed to being a lot. And there's just such a deep part of me that wants and needs to relax. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's softening. It's so felt. And loving and appreciating her, right? I think it's so often, we talked about it in many different ways, but these past selves are what we deem as negative. It's like, okay, I need to move through that. I need to get past that, or it's gone. But to grieve it and to feel that. So thank you in real time, bringing that up and bringing that through and loving on her, loving her up.
She's missed out on a lot.
Yeah.
So. And
the thing I always like to say in that space, and I know you know this already, but people go their whole lives without realizing it.
Yeah.
And you know, there's so much. You know, there's so much. And I was watching I can't remember if it was a documentary or whatnot, but it was on, I think it was the Happiness Study, where they had talked about a couple. There was a couple at like 96 years old. They interviewed, I think the wife was 96, husband was 94, and they had just met like 2 years before that. And they interviewed them and they were like, I thought I was going to go my whole life without finding real love. And they're like, nothing has brought me more joy than these 2 years with that person. And that is such a powerful reminder where life just happens how it's supposed to happen, and we find what we're supposed to find when we're supposed to find it. And you know, if it wasn't for your awareness and wasn't for that little girl and wasn't for everything you've been leaning into, you would never have had this realization, or it would have happened 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and it still would have been beautiful. Right? So just a little
right on time. Right on time.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you for all of you.
Thank you.
Truly.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
I'm excited for her now.
We're excited. We're excited to watch her come to life. Wow. Juicy.
We'll have to do a part 2 of this like later.
No, we will.
See what happens.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So
I'll have an update.
Yeah, please.
You just gave me a spiritual wand. And
That's it. Tori's gonna be like, I'm coming to Costa Rica.
Come on,
Temple nights, here we go.
Tantra Bros.
Exactly.
Oh,
Tantric
you
Bros.
planted the seed.
Right?
It's
It
been
keeps
planted.
coming up. Ryan and I leave dinner last night. We're like, everyone keeps saying that. How come every time we tell someone, they're like, you got to do that?
There's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
So Tori, you're up to amazing things. You said you
Thank
wear a
you.
lot of hats.
I do.
How can people find you?
Mm.
What's the best place to connect with you? Give us the goods.
Yeah. Best place to find me is ToriGordon.com. I'm also on social media, the Tori Gordon on TikTok and Instagram. And then I run a podcast called The Coachable Podcast. I have similar conversations like this over there. Just trying to be honest about my journey as best as I can and take people along for the ride. Because I hope, if nothing else, that this just like reminds people that like we're all fucking human and we haven't arrived, and I haven't like, this is, like I said at the beginning, it's an ever evolving process, and I'm just like hoping to make it a little bit more relatable for people, you know, that they can see themselves in the stories that I tell and that we tell, and that they can feel a little less alone. So that's where I am at. That's my side of the internet. So if you want to learn more, you can go to ToriGordon.com.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Love you guys. Thank you.
Love you. And as always,
stay lit.
I love it.
Come here.
Thank you.